Hello, North Haven, and welcome to yet another edition of Sports Talk. Today I'm here with Justin Paolillo. Today we're going to start the show off with a little bit of the AFC wildcard race. Obviously, it's been crazy so far this year. Right now, there are 6 teams in the AFC at 7-5. Obviously, some of these teams can still win their division. But as of right now, the teams at 7-5 fighting for a spot in are Miami Dolphins, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Cleveland Browns. Justin, out of these teams, which one do you think has the best chance? Or maybe which two of them do you think have the best chance?
Okay, this one's tough for me to say because I'm not a big fan of this team, but I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens here. This has nothing to do with, I dislike them. A lot of times I feel like I would say, definitely not the Ravens because I don't like them, but I feel like just because of the division they're in, and I think they have the easiest schedule going forward. But, so, for example, if you look at the team like the Miami Dolphins, they're in that. I feel like they're in a tougher division than, say, the Ravens are. So it's going to be a tougher road to get there. Do they still play the Patriots one more time?
Yeah, they have one more time on the schedule in New England too.
So that's a big game, obviously. But most people are going to consider that a loss just because Tom Brady's playing like an MVP this year. But so I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens there. Another team you really can't go away from is. I got to go with my Buffalo Bills here. I know I just mentioned the difficulty in that conference, but I think they can overcome it. I think they're a better team than the Dolphins. I would give the Dolphins the edge at the quarterback position, but as far as offensive weapons go, I'm going to give it to the Bills with my pick for Rookie of the Year, Sammy Watkins, and is C.J. Spiller. How's he doing?
He went down early, but he definitely helped them get to where they were.
Yeah, it's just so I just feel like with all the weapons they got. It's tough to play in Buffalo with the cold weather. I know you're not a big guy on home field advantage, but it is tough to go up there and play. They're not going to get a home field game, but like I said, it's going to be tough for both the Dolphins and the Bills. But I think if two teams are going to come out of that 7-5 group, it's going to be either the Baltimore Ravens or the Buffalo Bills. But I honestly wouldn't count out the Chargers at this point either.
Chargers are 8-4, but once again, a team that's going to be in the mix fighting for wild card spots. So I can see the Chargers as well. Surprising, the AFC East seems like it's been such a basically irrelevant conference. Seems like it always goes to the Patriots. But in the last couple of years, you're seeing Miami's been playing better, Buffalo's playing better. When the Jets draft Marcus Mariota in the offseason, they're going to get better. But I think that this Miami team could be legitimate. It seems like Miami and another team is always kind of floating around, and it seems like at the end of the season they seem to fall apart. They start losing games or whatever it is. Oakland a couple years back was right in it, and they had to go 8-8 to make it, and they lost in their last game. So it always seems like Miami's right there, and then they start falling apart at the end. I think Ryan Tannehill has played really well. It was crazy how at the beginning of the season a lot of people were questioning if Ryan Tannehill and the head coach were working out and if that offense was going to be able to work well. And Ryan Tannehill was playing really well. They played the Denver Broncos and played them incredibly well. Came right down to the wire. I believe it was a 3-point game in the end. So Ryan Tannehill has definitely been really impressive. And I think that Miami could definitely make some noise in the AFC. Another team that I would be looking into is basically any team from the AFC North right now. The Bengals are, I believe it's 8-3-1, and then Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland all sitting at 7-5. I'll be interested to see what Cleveland does at quarterback. Obviously, Brian Hoyer has been the man there, but he came out, Johnny Manziel went in, drove the Cleveland down the field, and ultimately scored a touchdown. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. It appears like as of right now, they are sticking with Brian Hoyer, but he's definitely going to be on a short lease moving forward. Brian Hoyer seems to be a streaky quarterback. He had 300 games in a row, and then he was throwing for below 200 yards the next two. So it'll be interesting to see if he can really turn it around with the pressure being advanced onto him with Johnny Manziel really breathing down his neck, and see what he can do then. And then obviously Baltimore and Pittsburgh, it seems like those teams are always in the hunt, always threats to possibly win a Super Bowl. I think that exactly. I think that Joe Flacco, a guy that Holden wasn't a fan of a couple weeks ago, I think that he's been playing well. You can argue this guy never really has the weapons he does. Right now he's got Steve Smith and Torrey Smith both playing at great levels. Justin Forsett has really picked it up. You were wondering with what happened with Ray Rice and all that if the running game was going to be there for him. But they really has stepped up, played very well. Justin Forsett really came out of nowhere. This guy's almost in his 30s, and he's still running the ball very effectively. Any of those teams, then Pittsburgh, Le'Veon Bell, he's on my fantasy team, probably the best pick I had all year, doing a great job for them. And then Ben Roethlisberger, I guess he's a playoff quarterback, even though he doesn't throw touchdowns in the Super Bowl. But anyways,
he'll be Super Bowl MVP this year, right?
But if I was to pick one team out of there, I'd probably pick, Kansas City in the AFC West maybe. Two AFC West teams came in last year, but overall I'd probably agree with you and take Baltimore. I think that defense is coming together, and Joe Flacco has really stepped up in the last couple of weeks, played well for his team. Then obviously the running game they have there, I think that Baltimore is really going to be a threat.
So you're counting the Texans out with your.
Well, you could put the Texans in there. I mean,
they don't have the same record, but maybe they can.
Yeah,
get hot.
Texans can definitely do something. I mean, that defense is there. I mean, if they can get Jadeveon Clowney back to what he needs to be, he's been basically hurt all year. I mean, you can imagine what they could do with Jadeveon Clowney and possibly an NFL MVP and J.J. Watt on the defensive side. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick in the quarterback situation there, Fitzpatrick played really well in their last game. I think threw 6 touchdowns against the Raiders, but again, that is the Raiders defense. So if Ryan Fitzpatrick can play at a high level, which I think he's capable of doing, he did it in Buffalo. I mean, he had a couple signature wins against the Patriots a couple years back. I think that he can that Buffalo or the Texans can definitely do something, but I don't see them winning that division. So they're obviously going to have to do it through a wild card spot. Moving on the other side of the conference, you have the NFC wild card. It really looks like it's going to come down to 4 teams. 2 of them coming from the NFC West with Seattle and then San Francisco and maybe the Cardinals if they start falling down.
Yep.
That was Justin's team that was going to run away with the division.
They still are.
But anyways, the other teams are Detroit and then Dallas or Philadelphia, whichever team doesn't win the NFC East out of there. Justin, out of these 4 teams, if you were to pick 2 to move on, what would be the 2?
2 to move on out of those 4 teams. Well, the one team will be whoever loses the NFC East. In my opinion, I just think both these teams are dominant. When they're dominant in certain games, like one game they won't do well, then they'll do well. Like for example, the Eagles and Cowboys play, and the Cowboys didn't look so good. The Eagles looked great, and then maybe for example, if they played next week, maybe the Cowboys look great and the Eagles look bad.
I mean, the Eagles got beat up by the Packers a couple weeks ago. So.
Exactly, and then for all we know, the Cowboys can get blown out any week if Tony Romo starts to go downhill again. But I think. This will be a very close race, and it seems like the Cowboys are always coming down to that final regular season game is almost like a first playoff game for Tony Romo, and then they wind up losing and going their classic 8-8 mediocrity. But
and Tony Romo's a bad quarterback.
I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I mean 8-8's not a horrible record. I mean, it's not the best record, but they were in a pretty decent conference, and the Redskins are pretty good. I mean, the Giants are always always a good possibility to win any game they play just because of the Giants, but. I think it's going to come down to those 2, so the winner is going to get in. The winner will get in the playoffs, and then the loser, I think, will get the wild card. And then the other team, this one's tough because I really like the Detroit Lions and what they got going up there, but I think they're going to lose the division to the Packers. However, I don't think you can count out one of those NFC West teams, like you mentioned with the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, we mentioned on the show we thought they were done, but as Jeremy mentioned to me a little earlier today, he was like, when you're the Super Bowl champions, you're never out of it until you're out of it. So I think I want to say the Detroit Lions, but I'm going to have to go with one of those 2 teams. So I don't know. Probably if I had to pick one of those, I'm not trusting the 49ers at this point. I mean, there's rumors that Jim Harbaugh wants to go to Michigan to coach. So football. I don't think they have the best chemistry going right now. So I think if one of those NFC West teams were to make it, it would be the 49ers. So I guess as my final verdict is going to be for the NFC wild card, it'll be either. Well, let me think. Let me pick a team who's going to win that division. I think the Eagles will take it, so I'm going to go with the Cowboys and the 49ers as my 2 wild card teams.
Okay. I honestly would not be surprised if you saw 2 NFC West teams.
You like that conference?
In the NFL. That's the best conference in the NFL right now. I mean, the Rams are at the bottom of it, and they've beaten the Seahawks. They played well against the 49ers, played well against the Cardinals. I mean, that team is right around there. I mean, if they draft a quarterback or improve their line, get Bradford back, I can see them contending just in the NFC, just like any of those other teams in the division. Obviously, the loss of Carson Palmer to the Cardinals has definitely hurt them. I think they've lost the last 2 since he went down. So obviously they're not where a lot of people would want them to be. I mean, I can still see them getting in the playoffs. I mean, if they lost out, they'd still be a 9-7 team, which usually gets you in.
And I don't think they're going to lose out.
Yeah, I don't think they would lose out. So I mean, that's probably going to be one of these wild card teams or possibly the division winner. As of right now, I think there's 2 teams here that always seem to fall apart at the end. You have Tony Romo in December, which always is a problem. And then the Detroit Lions never finish out a season well.
True.
And when they do, they get eliminated in the first round by the Saints.
Every year we're saying, they're...
So, honestly, Seattle, with where they are now, this defense is slowly turning back into the Predators, basically. At the beginning of the year, They were the prey. They were the reigning Super Bowl champions. They didn't have the same swagger they had, the same poise going into every game that they did before they were Super Bowl champions. And now that they're kind of gaining that back, Richard Sherman's been getting back to his trash talking and whatever it is, getting back to what he was doing before. This offense is going to turn around. Percy Harvin, a lot of people thought that was going to be detrimental to this team. They still have one of the best players in the football every time, one of the best players in the field, Marshawn Lynch, every time he goes out there. Russell Wilson's going to do what he has to do. He's the leader of that team. He gets it done, whatever it is. I mean, a lot of people saw his locker room falling apart. I think it's coming together right now. I think that's going to be a serious team, and I would not want to have to play them, even if they're coming into my house, come any game in the postseason. And then, Detroit, seems like they're always going to make it. This is the year Detroit makes it to the postseason. Green Bay's right there playing incredible football, just beat the Patriots, and really pointed out some flaws in that Patriots defense. I mean, they're not looking as invincible as they did maybe before that game, before the Packers game. And then you look at Dallas, obviously. Tony Romo always plays horrible in December, so you could see this team possibly spinning downwards. And I still don't trust Mark Sanchez in Philadelphia, being a Jets fan. Maybe that's just some internal wounds coming out now, but I don't trust him there. And then San Francisco, I think Colin Kaepernick's a big-time quarterback. He seems to be there every game. It seems like they're always, when he's on the field, contending somehow, whether it's going to the conference championship or going to the Super Bowl. The conference championship, he throws a big pick. A lot of people say he's not a big-time quarterback, but they forget that he was in the Super Bowl the year before, and he has a chance to win the game, but just slightly overthrows Crabtree to allow the Ravens to win that year. But I think that San Francisco is definitely a serious team. Right now, I'm taking Seattle and San Francisco because I think three NFC West teams are going to get in, and 3 NFC West teams should get in. I mean, the amount of times they play each other, Seattle and San Francisco, that's always a great rivalry game. That's a game that always seems to be prime time, Sunday night, Monday night football. And then the Cardinals have been playing well. No one saw that coming. Bruce Arians, honestly, praise him. I think he's probably the best coach in the NFL right now, other than maybe Bill Belichick, because of what this guy's done. With the Colts when Chuck Pagano was out and then going to the Cardinals, led them to a 10-6 record last year, and that somehow didn't get him in the postseason. But a lot of good things going on in Arizona.
They're moving in the right direction, the Cardinals.
Oh, definitely. Right. I think they're a true star quarterback away from being a potential Super Bowl contending team. And a couple years back, it looked like Peyton Manning, that was going to be the spot he was going to go. Ends up in Denver. Imagine if they have the team they have now with a Peyton Manning on them. That'd be a serious contender.
Well, Peyton Manning going anywhere, except maybe Jacksonville is going to be a serious contender. But yeah, imagine a team like Arizona.
Absolutely. Speaking of Peyton Manning, we're going to segue into the MVP race in the NFL. Justin, if you give us maybe your top 3, top 5 guys that you think could possibly take home the MVP award this
season. The NFL MVP, I like talking about the NBA MVP, but we're going to switch it up here a little bit because the NFL season is slowly winding down. However, it is still a long way to go until first Sunday in February. But as far as NFL MVP is going to go, I'm going to just list top 5 guys and I'll kind of pick one. So I'm going to go Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, J.J. Watt.
Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady.
Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, after a great possible Super Bowl preview up in Green Bay the other day. So out of those 5 guys, of course there's 4 quarterbacks in there, right? They have to get it. But I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers on this one. In the beginning of the year, I would not have said Aaron Rodgers. No way I would have said him. I just feel like he's an elite QB, but he's never had that, outstanding year where he's definitely the MVP, but he's always had great years, but he's always been, equivalent to the guys like Tom Brady. He's never taken that next step, but I think this year he will. Personally, I think this team's going to make a deep playoff run. I think they're definitely winning this division. As you mentioned, the Lions probably going to fall apart again in December, and if that happens, they're just going to basically walk right into it. And I think Peyton Manning, riding off a big win in against the Patriots, against Tom Brady, as you mentioned, that defense is much better this year for the Patriots, and that was a good game. That was Aaron Rodgers. That was Aaron Rodgers' win. Other guys made the plays, but he was that leader out there. He was making the passes. He was the captain of the offense there, and he's the captain of that team. So I think you can't really give an MVP just for leadership, but he is getting the job done. He is putting up great numbers, and I think this season's going to only get better for him, and I think this will lead to possibly a Super Bowl berth. I'm not saying they're going to win, but I think they could definitely make a deep run, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see them playing in February.
I think Aaron Rodgers would definitely be an easy pick here just because of the way he's been playing. Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, the weapons on that team are endless. Eddie Lacy just been an incredible back. Another guy on my fantasy team. I'm in the playoffs, by the way, if you didn't know. I'm gonna win the fantasy football league. So just for you, Justin, I'm gonna bring home a fantasy football trophy. I'm gonna put it right here on the set, and then that's how we're gonna start the show. Holden will be sitting here, but we don't gotta worry about him. He's not here yet, but it'll be right here. Anyways, Holden obviously a huge fan of the Packers. He thinks they're going to the Super Bowl, but I mean, if I was to pick maybe 5 guys, Aaron Rodgers obviously comes to mind. Tom Brady, I mean, maybe not have the stats, but the wins are there. It seems like he's doing it with smoke and mirrors, really. I mean, it seems like Rob Gronkowski and, the kitchen sink over there on the offensive side. So, I mean, Shane Vereen, Jonas Great, seems like they have a new running back showing up every year. They just got LeGarrette Blount. He scores a touchdown this first game back.
He's knocking people over.
Yeah, it's crazy what the Patriots have been able to do. I mean, a lot of respect to that franchise. Even though I'm a Jets fan, they always seem to get it done. Brandon LaFell.
I mean, your girlfriend's a big Patriots fan.
Oh, of course. Shout out to her and whatnot. But Tom Brady is obviously going to be on the list. I mean, Peyton Manning. I mean, he always does with numbers. Last year he had incredible record-breaking numbers, so I think it was easy to give it to him. I mean, maybe a guy like DeMarco Murray, he's kind of fallen off as the season goes on, maybe trying to save him for the postseason for Dallas. But as of right now, my number one pick is J.J. Watt. You know how I feel about
Oh, yeah, you've been saying
MVP.
J.J. Watt for a while now.
I think it should be the best player on the field, regardless of if the team's winning or not. I mean, the team's got to be they can't be 0-12 and you expect the guy to get the MVP award. But the Texans really, with a lack of talent, are right around 6-6, 7-5. Are they going to be able to make a push and possibly make the postseason?
Who knows?
I mean, you look at what J.J. Watt has done. What hasn't he done? This guy gets interceptions as a defensive lineman. He fumbles recovered. He has like 6 touchdowns, which is more than I think Larry Fitzgerald has this season. Yeah, he's caught 2 or 3 touchdowns as a tight end. This guy's basically everywhere on the field, and it seems like he's the heart and soul of that team. Whenever there's someone, pumping the guys up before the game or trying to get someone motivated halfway through that's maybe not playing at their best, seems like he's always over there pumping people up. And this defense is only going to get better when guys like Jadeveon Clowney come back. And when this team can find a legitimate quarterback, which they could possibly do through the draft, I mean, you have guys that could possibly fall late in the first round. Maybe they take a risk with a guy like Jameis Winston if he falls because people aren't liking what he's doing off the field. I mean, if they can get him, pair him with the defense J.J. Watt has, and if their offense can become explosive, I mean, the weapons they have, I mean, Andre Johnson's still there, given he may want out come season end. DeAndre Hopkins, a young wide receiver from Clemson. Arian Foster, Alfred Blue, also a good running back on that team. I mean, I think that team is set for a good run from years to come, and J.J. Watt's going to be the centerpiece of that. There. Exactly. There's a lot of potential there. I think J.J. Watt's just the best player on the field whenever he steps out there, regardless of maybe the game he plays, like a Peyton Manning or a Tom
without
Brady.
a doubt winning Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh, no. If he doesn't win Defensive Player of the Year, it's a problem. There's something wrong with the system. I believe that there was a couple years back when Charles Woodson won it. He had 6 interceptions, and I thought Darrelle Revis should have won it. He only had 2 interceptions, but no one threw at Darrelle Revis, so he didn't have the stats that Charles Woodson has. That's why if you're looking at Defensive Player of the Year compared to an Offensive Player of the Year, I think Offensive Player of the Year, a lot of people focus more on the stats. If you put up 5,000 yards as a quarterback and throw 50 touchdowns like what Peyton Manning did last year, no one's really going to question him. Yeah, he's the best offensive player, but you might be able to consider Tom Brady the best offensive player right now. And, I mean, this guy could possibly not even break 4,000 passing yards and have a very successful season, win the AFC East, possibly get the number 1 seed in the AFC, and basically be overlooked to a guy like, I don't know, maybe a Matthew Stafford who throws for 5,000 yards and 30 touchdowns or something like that. That's why it's hard to gauge sometimes how much of an impact each player has on their team. When J.J. Watt, he's obviously a guy that has the numbers, but maybe he doesn't have a great game, but it's because the Bengals put 3 linemen on him to take him out of the game, and maybe the guy next to him has 20 tackles for a loss.
But that's still impacting the game.
He still has a huge impact on the game.
He's drawing 3 linemen. So.
Exactly. So sometimes it's hard to measure how much impact each player has on the game. But if I was to pick an MVP right now, I think I would definitely go for a defensive player in J.J. Watt. It'd be the first time since I believe Lawrence Taylor won it a long time ago. But I think that if I was to pick one guy, I mean, there's really not a standout quarterback right now, given maybe Andrew Luck is the guy. If you're looking
he's
for
11
a quarterback.
touchdowns. Isn't he 11 for breaking the
Manning record? He's got a crazy number of touchdowns right now. I mean, if you are to pick a offense player, definitely be Andrew Luck. But I think that J.J. Watt is definitely is the most valuable player on his team, at least. Without J.J. Watt, I could see the Texans being easily at the bottom of the division.
You could see him. Would they be tied with the Jaguars right now?
I don't know, but maybe tied with the Jets at 2-10 over there. But anyways, moving on, we're going to talk about a little bit more with quarterbacks. Obviously, the Cleveland Browns, a team in the thick of things in the AFC. 7-5, obviously looking for possibly either winning the AFC North or getting a wild card spot. You have obviously Brian Hoyer and Johnny Manziel as your two guys in that system. Hoyer's been playing pretty well, but struggling the last couple games. Manziel comes in, brings Cleveland on a last-second touchdown drive. Justin, if you're the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, who are you giving the ball Sunday?
If I'm the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, I'm giving the ball to Johnny Manziel.
Ooh.
Because think about this kind of story. If Johnny Manziel, I mean, all that stuff that happened in Texas A&M, all the off-field problems, comes in the NFL, all this publicity, number one selling jersey, media attention, media paradise over in Cleveland. If you start him and he possibly leads his team, possibly to winning the division, and then maybe, let's not call it a Super Bowl run, but maybe they make a deep playoff run. Could you imagine how much publicity that team would get? Who knows? Maybe a couple free agents might want to come. I just think if you start him and he turns out great for you. And I think it's a win-win situation because if you start him and he dominates, look at, like I just mentioned, you're going to get publicity, you're going to get the win, you're going to have a good team because Manziel is a good quarterback when he's on top of his game. And if he doesn't do well, you just put Hoyer in, and then there's really no competition. You just ride Hoyer the rest of the way. So I think it is a win-win situation, but overall, you have to go with Johnny Manziel here. I think it's going to be the best option for them moving forward. He's definitely the future of that franchise. Brian Hoyer is not the future. I think, if anything, you almost have Hoyer start now, and then maybe next year, like if he starts this Sunday, you almost move Hoyer to a backup spot because if Manziel were to go down being a running quarterback, you have Hoyer to step right in and maybe not equalize the same production as Manziel, but definitely be a solid replacement to it. And so I just think it's a win-win situation if you start Manziel. I think they definitely should, and I think that's going to give them the best opportunity to win and possibly make a playoff run. But I'm going with Manziel starting this Sunday if I'm the head coach of the Browns.
I believe the dilemma the Cleveland Browns coaching staff is facing now is, in order to have Johnny Manziel be effective in their system, it all has to change. They have to revolve around Johnny Manziel and how Johnny football plays the game. You look at the offense here in Texas A&M, wide open. He's got 3 receivers on the right, 2 on the left, really open. He's able to make plays, whether it be through the passing game or escaping and gaining yards with his feet. But overall, you're going to have to change your system to fit Johnny Manziel's style. He's not a pocket passer like Brian Hoyer is, and he's not going to be able to come in that system and be as successful as you're going to want him to be. So as the Browns coaching staff, I would probably elect to keep Brian Hoyer just because of you're 13 games in the season now, and it's so hard for them to completely change their offense the way that they're going to have to. And not only that, all these guys, the Josh Gordon just coming back, and Miles Austin being on with the team so long, it's going to be hard for these guys to completely change how they've played the first 13 games of the season and then adjust to this new play style that's going to be implemented to fit Johnny Manziel. Overall, I think Brian Hoyer has just been an inconsistent guy. That's the only thing wrong with him. He had 2 weeks where he threw for 300 yards consecutively, and then 2 weeks where he threw for under 200 yards. If he can get to that mark where he's throwing the ball well, their running game is very good. They have two young guys in Isaiah Crowell and Terrence West that have been running the ball very well for them. And if they can just mix that and have him work off of play action, I think that they're still going to be able to win games. They've obviously gotten to 7-5, and like Brian Hoyer said earlier, it's not lucky for them to be 7-5 right now. They played well, they earned those 7 wins, and they earned those 7 losses. But regardless, or 5 losses, yeah. And regardless, I think that this team can be successful with either or. But just at the stage they are now, to re-implement a new offense with Johnny Manziel becoming the starter, I think would be too much.
You think the risk is much greater than the reward of starting Manziel?
I think the risk would be if it doesn't work and having to go back to Brian Hoyer. If Johnny Manziel can run the offense the way it has been run the entire season, if he could step in and run it the way it's supposed to be run, by all means, go have your shot in the spotlight, whatever it is. But I think the real dilemma is if you put Johnny Manziel in and he doesn't play well, Brian Hoyer's a free agent after the season.
Yeah, you think he's going to re-sign with a team that kind of ditched him?
Exactly. Obviously Manziel is their long-term plan, but Do they want to sign Hoyer to maybe a 2-year deal, let him play out, and then bring Johnny Manziel back in? Or do they want to full-on give Manziel the ball? If they want to do that, I think they should start Johnny Manziel, because you re-implement the new offense, which obviously is going to be hard for them now. But if they don't think I think by putting Johnny Manziel in, they almost say, we're looking towards the future compared to this season, because that is the future of their franchise. So if they are to do that, I think that would be if they're not even considering signing Brian Hoyer back to a deal, and they're going to use Johnny Manziel fourth, obviously get him the time now if you need to. I mean, I don't think they feel like they can win the Super Bowl with the team they have now. And if you can't, by all means, there's no reason for you to continue to push on and try to do so. So I think that if you aren't either satisfied with Brian Hoyer quarterback right now, or you think that Johnny Manziel is going to be better for the future, you put him in, give him some game time experience. Even if it's in the same offense they're running now, you know you're not going to have the same productivity you would get out of him if you change it around. But it gives him the time he needs. And honestly, there's going to be big games coming down the stretch. It gives him a lot of big game experience. And if they do get into a postseason game, obviously that's going to be a lot of
as you mentioned,
good experience.
With Hoyer's inconsistency, if you have big games coming up, you can't have him being consistent, 2 out of 4 games.
Yeah.
You need somebody there at least 3, but you want him 4 out of 4 games at the top of his level. So if you have Hoyer staying inconsistent, is that the best option going forward? I think you're not. I don't think the outcome of, if say you start Hoyer, it's not Hoyer versus Manziel, or Manziel versus Hoyer, it's not going to be a drastic difference. But I think you got to make the right decision to make that just slight difference, maybe to push them into a division win instead of a wild card, or a wild card instead of a no playoff berth. So I don't think it's going to be much of a difference, but
I mean, this is a team I'm definitely going to be rooting for coming down the stretch. Obviously, a feel-good story. It seems like they've always been at the bottom of the division for as long as I could remember. But Josh Gordon obviously coming back, that's going to be a big boost to the offense. And, I mean, Brian Hoyer and Josh Gordon seemed to connect really well last season. I mean, the 3 or 4 games Hoyer was in, Josh Gordon put up crazy numbers. So, I mean, maybe if Josh Gordon comes back, Hoyer can gain that consistency and become more of what he needs to be for this team to make that possible run in the postseason. But overall, I think that it really comes down to who you're gonna give the ball to next season. If it's going to be Brian Hoyer, if you're going to attempt to sign this guy back, then by all means, give him the ball, let him do what he's been doing, and see if he can get you the postseason. But if you have no interest in signing him back, then give it to Manziel. But I mean, I remember when Manziel was drafted, a lot of people were wondering what was going to happen. Were they even going to give Hoyer a chance to start? And this guy was eager to get him in there. He said, "Bring him in here. Let's go. I'm ready for this competition." And I mean, clearly he was leading this team to the 7-5 record. But really, I mean, if this guy was just playing, even if he wasn't putting up the 300-yard games, putting up 200 yards, a touchdown or 2 a game, and just consistently putting up numbers like that, I don't think the Browns have a problem. I mean, maybe you're looking at them possibly being an 8-4, a 9-3 team, and sitting atop of that division compared to from the outside looking in. But overall, I think that this Browns team could make the postseason. I don't see them winning a Super Bowl. So with that being the case, it really just depends on if you want to get Manziel the experience now, or maybe wait and give him the full season next year to really grow as a quarterback. Moving on, we're going to go to our Ask Justin and Jeremy segments. We did this last show as well. We asked Justin and myself a question, and we obviously just elaborate on it and take our side on it. For Justin's question, it's going to be, how would you approach rebuilding teams like the Atlanta Hawks, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Boston Celtics?
Okay, so I'll start off with the Atlanta Hawks here. The Atlanta Hawks they're basically the Goldilocks team, where they're not good enough to win a title, but they're not gonna get a lottery pick, and that's probably the worst place to be in all of sports, because in any league you don't want to if you're not winning a title and you're not getting draft picks, what are you doing besides signing marginal free agents who aren't going to do much? And I think that's where the Hawks are now. I mean, Jeff Teague and Al Horford are their quote unquote stars of the team, and then Millsap's a solid starter there. But then, I mean, if you look at the other guys they got there, Kyle Korver, Damari Carroll, I mean, they got Thabo Sefolosha. These are all guys who, like Thabo Sefolosha was just basically a defensive veteran on the Thunder, and then you sign him in, I mean, and then you bring him there. Like, what does that really do for the team? You bring in a guy like Sefolosha on a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, who's going to come off your bench and play D for a championship team. Not like that. So I just don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, Horford's only getting older, so he's been your quote-unquote star for that team, and he's only getting older from here, and he's not going to. Honestly, people getting older, you're going to get worse, and you're not going to get the same amount of stats. So that's really going to hurt them. And I feel like even if they finish 4th or 5th, they're not winning at the East. And the past couple of years, they finished, I think, in the 6th seed. That seems to be where they always finish. I don't know. That's probably one of the worst places to be, the 6th seed in the NBA. And I think if you're the Hawks and you're rebuilding from here, I think you need to drop one of your veterans. Honestly, if it has to be trading Al Horford, I think you have to do that. Trade him for.
There have been rumors of Al Horford and Paul Millsap possibly in a package deal to a team like maybe Memphis or a team like the Nuggets possibly.
Yeah, like the Nuggets would be a great pick. Maybe bring in a guy like Kenneth Faried, who isn't a superstar, but he's a young star to play with Jeff Teague, and maybe can grow into one. And then maybe you can get a draft pick out of that, and maybe secure a Jahlil Okafor depending on what pick they get, or Cliff Alexander coming out of this draft. So I think what you need to do is you need to trade one of the guys, whether it be Teague or Horford. I think Teague's a little harder to trade because there's really not a big use for starting point guards in the league because most teams have a quality starter. So I think you got to trade Horford at this point. That's really the only way you're going to come out of this, trade for draft picks, because if the Hawks finish in the 6th seed again, what does that do? They don't win, and they have a similar team next year, but only older, so it's not going to help. As far as the 76ers go, 0-17. So that's a very bad team, and people have criticized the 76ers for drafting 2 guys who weren't even going to play with Noel last year, and then this year they drafted Embiid, who won't start probably playing till next year because there's no reason to bring him back. But who knows how Embiid's going to do? Are they just assuming Noel and Embiid are the next Twin Towers and they're going to dominate with Michael Carter-Williams and be a 3 seed down the road? No. What if Noel hasn't been playing great this year? He's averaging like 10 and 7 on a very bad 76ers team where he could be getting as much touches as he wanted. I thought he was going to average close to 15, 16, and 10 with 3 blocks a game, and he's not producing. Michael Carter-Williams is there, and I think he's the face of your franchise until he possibly leaves in free agency. Triple-double the other night. I think he's averaging, I want to say 15 points, 13 assists, and
like
10 rebounds over the past 2 or 3 games. So with the 76ers, I think you need to somehow – I don't really know what to do if you're the 76ers. I guess you can keep drafting and hope for the best. No free agent's going to want to go there. You're going to keep getting marginal guys. 76ers are in a very bad place. And then, as you mentioned, the Celtics there, they have a lot of veterans. I think you need to trade veterans like Rondo, Gerald Wallace, and Jeff Green, and just let Marcus Smart maybe get some quality guys like you mentioned, Kenneth Faried from the Denver Nuggets. Bring him in, build a team. You're a young team. You got to rebuild from there. I think if you're keeping Rondo and all those other veterans, it's not helping your team. And
could the Celtics potentially attract a top free agent?
With
there are
the veterans
of Kevin Love possibly going there before the Cleveland Cavaliers. But do you think that with the team they have right now, maybe if they do trade guys like Rondo and Jeff Green and Wallace, like you said, do you think they could potentially attract a guy like maybe Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook?
Well, that's where they have the advantage over the 76ers and Hawks, because Boston has a history of getting top free agents, and especially if Rondo's there. Who doesn't want to play with a guy like Rondo? Last night he had 2 points, I want to say 12 rebounds and 19 assists. So you want to play with a guy like that where you can do all the scoring. And as you mentioned, maybe a guy like Kevin Love goes there, and that's where you keep your veterans. But I think you have to go one way or the other. You have to either have to go, we're getting free agents this summer, or we're trading Rondo. You can't just, we'll see what happens. You have to do one or the other. I think all these 3 teams will be pretty bad this year. But I think if out of all these 3 teams, if one team's going to be a lot better next year, it's going to be the Boston Celtics, because they could acquire a free agent, or if they trade Rondo, they can get some young talent in there. But I think the 76ers are going down a bad path, and the Hawks, unless they do something drastic, they're just going to keep being mediocre every year. So it's tough. But I know I went on for a long time, but this is just a big thing. To me, that's the one thing I don't like about the NBA is the mediocre teams. I'm like, you got to do something. You can't keep going on this path. But I guess I'll ask you your question.
Now with the 76ers, do you think that if they were to, obviously they're going to be in the running for potentially the first, second, maybe third pick, who would be a guy that you think they should target, given they do have a stacked backcourt with Noel and Embiid when he comes back? What do you think that they're going to be able to? Where do you think they should go when it comes to the draft?
This one's tough, because if for some reason
you don't want to necessarily take Okafor because you're going to stack that backcourt even more.
As of right now, the top 2 guys look like Cliff Alexander and Jahlil Okafor, 2 power forwards, so it's going to be tough. The other thing is, though, if you take Okafor or Cliff Alexander, I think out of those two for the 76ers would be Cliff Alexander because he is more of a power forward. And if Noel doesn't work out this year, maybe you could slide him to a bench role or maybe trade him. And then if Embiid turns into, which I think he will, I think he'll have a much better career than Noel. I think if you draft a guy like Cliff Alexander and pair him up with Embiid, that's going to give you your best shot. But you could also draft a guard like the Harrison twins out of Kentucky. I don't know if they're that high on the draft board, but I mean we've seen crazier things done in the past. So I would think you either have to draft a shooting guard to play along with Michael Carter-Williams or trade Noel and bring in a guy like Cliff Alexander. But it's going to be a while before the 76ers are in playoff contention.
I mean, who do you think they could get potentially for a guy like Noel?
For a guy like Noel, I mean,
potentially maybe like a guy like Otto Porter they can trade into the Wizards.
You can slide him. Like exactly. You can get a guy like Otto Porter. I mean, even a veteran like a Gerald Wallace from the Boston Celtics. I mean, maybe you could do or maybe a Jeff Green from the Boston Celtics. I mean, you'd probably have to throw more than just Noel in because Green he's a solid veteran in the league. But I think if you could bring a guy like Green coming in with Carter Williams who could bring that veteran leadership, which, as I mentioned earlier, you're not going to get many veteran free agents who are not at the end of their career. I mean, Jason Richardson's there, but he's hurt every other year. So I think for a guy like Noel, I think you're going to either get, like you mentioned, a young guy like Otto Porter, or maybe if you could pair Noel with another young guy, you could, or maybe like a guy like Tony Rowan, you could bring in like a Jeff Green. But it'll be tough for the 76ers, and I guess we'll see what happens going forward. But they definitely have the talent there, and that Andrew Bynum injury 2 years ago did very much kill them. Like that was supposed to be their future, and he just killed them.
Honestly, I have to say, I think the 76ers could potentially be in the better situation out of all of these teams just because the Hawks, it seems like they've been in that Goldilocks zone since the Joe Johnson days before he was traded to the Nets. And then the Celtics, it doesn't seem like they would get as high of a pick as the 76ers would. I mean, potentially they're still going to be within the top 10, maybe top 5. But, I mean, anytime you go out of the top 5, it seems like maybe those guys aren't going to be as effective as they are, especially in the NBA, where you very rarely see a guy in the second round ever really do anything with their career. But I think the 76ers, obviously, it's bad right now, going 0-17 or whatever it is. But I think they have a lot of talent on that team, and a lot of potential, I would say, more than talent, just because Carter Williams is Rookie of the Year last year, and then Noel coming in, and Embiid when he comes back. I mean, if you can get a 2 or a 3 to pair with that group in the draft or somehow, I think that could definitely be a serious contender coming down the stretch.
I definitely agree. So I'll do the Ask Jeremy segment of this part. And my question to you is, Jeremy, I know you're a big college football fan. I asked you about it last time. But so I understand the SEC is the best conference in college football. I think that's accepted. I mean, maybe some people have other opinions, but it's basically that's them. When you think of college football, you think of the SEC. But what is in your opinion, what is the second and third best conference? Like, who could possibly in the next 10 years maybe compete with the SEC for best conference? But right now, who's the second or third best conference?
I mean, if you look at them, you have the Power 5, and you're talking about SEC, Pac-12, Big 10, Big 12, and then the ACC. I would honestly throw the ACC out right now. Obviously, Florida State's there, but it never really seems like any team really comes out of there. I mean, Florida State was not even in contention, 5 years back. It seems like they were in some down years, and then you look, I mean, Miami was obviously dominant back in like the 70s, 80s, 90s, but have really fallen off since. And, I mean, there's really no one else that really comes to mind out of the ACC. I mean, Duke had a good season last year, but Duke's not a football school. They're known for their basketball program. So right now I'm going to have the ACC basically out of the Power 5, probably in the 5th spot. And I think that's why Florida State's suffering in the playoffs. They're ranked, I believe, 4th it is now out of the 4 teams they're going to get in, despite being undefeated. I mean, a lot of analysts are very angry about that. They've said, this team's won 23 games in a row. They should be considered the top team. But, I mean, you look at their signature wins, and it's Clemson, Notre Dame team that's not even ranked. And I believe there's one more, but I can't remember who it is. But it really seems like they don't really have that signature win because every team they seem to beat is either just sitting in the top 25, like
or out.
The 24th, the 25th team are not even in there. So it's hard to really consider them a legitimate team without a signature win. And given they're not going to have a signature loss because they haven't lost yet, I mean, it seems like every week they're playing a subpar team and it's coming down to the wire. I mean, look at Boston College a couple weeks back. I mean, given that they have a good program and they've produced a lot of good NFL players. I mean, Matt Ryan, Andre Williams this year for the Giants, but they're by no means a team that should be threatening Florida State if they're this big favorite they are. I wouldn't be surprised if they got beat by Georgia Tech in this game. I mean, Georgia Tech runs a crazy offense out of the triple option. It's going to be interesting to see how Florida State's defense reacts to it. I mean, I'm not calling upset alert here, but I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia Tech really play Florida State well. A lot of people are saying don't underrate this Georgia Tech team. I mean, that would really shake up the college football playoff because then you could potentially have a team like a TCU and a Baylor, possibly two teams coming out of the Big 12 if they're able to win. So a lot of crazy things that could happen if Florida State is to go down to Georgia Tech. But out of the Power 5, I'm definitely going to have them at the 5th. And then the other three teams that remain, obviously, other than the SEC at 1, I mean, you could really argue either way for all of these teams. I mean, the Big 10, you have Ohio State, obviously, is the team right now that looks like it's going to come out of it. I mean, Michigan State, they have 2 losses, and they're to Ohio State and Oregon, which are 2 teams that are potentially going to be in the college football playoff. So it's hard to say that they're not deserving if a couple of teams are to go down. I mean, Michigan State's always got a good program. They upset Ohio State last year when they were going for their undefeated season. So I guess the game this year was kind of revenge for Ohio State. But overall, I think that that conference is very good. I mean, you always have teams like Nebraska. I mean, Wisconsin, Melvin Gordon had some crazy weeks this season. Seems like he's been a great player. He ran for over 2,000 yards this season. There's like 4 teams there. And, I mean, even Minnesota's a team that usually plays well. It seems like they're always in the lower half of the top 25. I mean, maybe if they're able to recruit a little better, get some better players, they could possibly contend in that division. And then you look at the Pac-12 and the Big 12. Obviously, both these teams potentially had 2 teams that could get in. The Pac-12 had teams like Arizona State, other than Oregon, obviously.
Yeah.
And Stanford, they're having a down year, but given last season, they might have been possibly in the running. So, I mean, that's 4 teams right there that play well. I mean, UCLA, USC, these teams are kind of in a downward spiral right now, but, I mean, they can easily turn around next season. I mean, recruiting for those schools is easy. Come play for us. Our campus is in Southern California.
Oh, yeah, you're big on that 70-degree weather.
It's hard to deny it going there. And then you look at the Big 12 with TCU, Baylor, Oklahoma's always good. They're kind of struggling this season. Oklahoma State. But it's right now, if I was to rank them, I'd probably say the SEC at 1.
Yep.
I'll put the Pac-12 at the 2 because Stanford usually has a better season. And if you could have 4 teams in there like Arizona State, Arizona, Stanford, and Oregon, that's a serious conference right there. And then I'd probably have the Big 10 second with Ohio State and Michigan State being the 2 superpowers there. I mean, Michigan's going to turn their program around. I mean, they obviously got rid of.
So do you have the Pac-10 as second and then the Big?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd go SEC, Pac-10, Big 10, and then the Big 12 with,
and then ACC.
with Oklahoma. And then I'd have the ACC at the bottom just because
I know you're always a little upset with Florida State.
Now,
being
honestly, if I was on the committee, I would not even have Florida State in my top 4 right now.
Where would you have them? Like
I would have
5,
them
6?
From the outside looking in 5, 6. I mean,
if you're not in top 4, it
teams,
doesn't matter.
There's 4. Yeah, basically, there's 4 teams I would take over them right now. I mean, you have Alabama's the best team in the country right now. I mean, they're 1 blemish against an Ole Miss team. I mean, it was only the 5th or 6th week into the season. Blake Smith didn't really play well. T.J. Yeldon didn't really have a great game. I mean, that was really just a bad game in general for them. And given you're going to have those games, I mean, you look at Ohio State, a team that their worst loss is at home to Virginia Tech, but it was the 2nd week of the season. J.T. Barrett is just getting into the roster after the Braxton Miller injury. I mean, given maybe you put him out of the top 4 now because of the injury to J.T. Barrett now as well, it'll be interesting to see what their third-string quarterback's able to do if he can come in and produce at the same level. A lot of people said J.T. Barrett and him are very similar. Maybe he's able to play at the same level he is, and if that's the case, I mean, I'd put this team in the top 4. And then you look at Oregon, I think is obviously going to be a contender. It always seems like their offense is just incredible. I mean, Mariota's running it right now. Even when Darren Thomas was running it back a couple years ago when they were in the national championship, it seems like they're always playing very well. And then, I mean, you can put either team from the Big 12, honestly, either Baylor or TCU I'd put over Florida State right now. And even Kansas State has 2 losses in there too. Auburn, an SEC team that almost just beat Alabama last week. And then to TCU, the team that a lot of people are putting in. I mean, they're ranked above Florida State now. So even the 2-loss teams in the Big 12, I mean, Kansas State, they have 3 teams within the top 10 with Kansas State at 9, and then TCU and Baylor, I believe, is 5 or 6. So I mean, I would have 4 teams over Florida State right now just because the lack of strength of schedule. I mean, it's kind of like what the football program is here. North Haven has 2 or 3 big games a year, and Xavier and Darien, and then Xavier Hand. And, I mean, one of those teams usually is a down year, so it's like, is that even really a challenge for them? I mean, you look at their signature wins, they really don't have any. I mean, but they get in because they win out the rest of their games.
And they really need 2 wins, and they can get a state title. I mean, they deserve it. They are a good football program, but
it seems like there's always kind of a lack of competition.
And finally, as part of the Ask Jeremy segment, after the big weekend in the past weekend for college football with rivalry week, 2 signature wins or 2 signature games, Mississippi State with Mississippi getting the win, and then Auburn losing to Alabama. After rivalry week, give me your top 4 for the playoffs.
Rivalry week is always crazy. It seems like this Mississippi State game always seems to kind of go unnoticed, but this year it was obviously crucial. I mean, if Ole Miss has 1 loss and Mississippi State has 1 loss going in like they had, that could have been a potential win-in game for either of these teams. I think if Mississippi State's able to win that game, they're going on to the college football playoff as of right now. But rivalry week always has a huge impact on it. Alabama, obviously, Amari Cooper had a huge game against Auburn to help them win. I think that if that game is in Auburn compared to at Alabama, I think Auburn potentially takes that game. And I still don't think, even with 2 losses, Alabama would have been thrown out of the college football playoff. I think they still would have been in because that SEC schedule is ridiculous. And if they're the only team coming out with 1 loss, they deserve to be in it. I honestly think the SEC, the winner of the SEC championship game, should have potentially an automatic in. I mean, you look at the team coming out of the SEC East and the University of Missouri. That's still a really good football team. I believe they had 2 losses all season. I wouldn't be surprised if they went in and really gave Alabama a run for their money. If there's an upset there, then things really start getting crazy. I mean, there's a lot of potential upsets here. I mean, you have Alabama could potentially use to Missouri. Florida State can potentially use to Georgia Tech. And then, I mean, even in the Big Ten, it's Ohio State, and I think it's either Wisconsin. I think it's Wisconsin. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Melvin Gordon run for 400 yards again and knocks off Ohio State. There's so many things that could happen in the last week of this season. I'm interested for it. As of right now, I'm going to have Alabama at 1. 2, I'm going to go with TCU. I think that offense is a serious contender. Their 1 loss, it was a 61-58 blowout in a loss to Baylor in Baylor. So obviously that's why a lot of people have Baylor over them because head-to-head Baylor has the win. 3 would probably be Oregon just because their 1 loss is to Arizona. Arizona played well that game. They're going to rematch them in the Pac-12. I mean, there's another team that can possibly beat again that's within this top 4. And then 4th, I guess you have to have Florida State because they're undefeated.
That's your team, though.
I mean, I would not be surprised if Alabama and Florida State played and Alabama won by 50. Like, this team is so upset-prone. And it seems like Jameis Winston, I feel like he's hurting his draft stock, honestly, the way he's been playing. I mean, it seems like he always has decent numbers.
Just enough
to
get the win.
Other than last week. I mean, I think he had 4 interceptions last week. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Jameis Winston in the future and what happens coming up in the draft and what happens coming up in the season. I'd be interested to see if he turns it up come playoff time, if they already get in.
This will be a big week in college football,
Absolutely.
Even though I'm not the biggest fan, but it's a big week nonetheless.
Moving on, we'll get to Justin's NBA topics. Carmelo Anthony obviously was a free agent this offseason, decided to sign back with the Knicks, could have went to other teams like the Bulls, Lakers, even the Rockets were offering him a deal. I believe it was yesterday, he said that the Bulls were a perfect fit for him in the offseason.
He also said he never wants to go through a free agency period again. He said it was like the worst experience of his life.
Yep.
Probably a lot of pressure, but
What do you think about it? Do you think he regrets his decision to go back to New York?
Do I think he regrets it? I only think he'll regret it in the end if the triangle offense doesn't work out or they don't get another free agent. I mean, the Knicks got big plans coming up. If the triangle works out for them and they could sign Rondo and Marc Gasol, I mean, this Knicks team completely takes a 180. I mean, they go from a team that could be in a Goldilocks zone where they're a 7 seed to possibly competing with the Cavs and Bulls for that 1-2 seed and maybe winning the East if they get a Rondo and Marc Gasol. But that's all going to come down to if the team could get into that triangle offense and if Phil Jackson and Derek Fisher can bring in those big free agents. Ultimately, I don't know, this one's tough because, like I said, if the triangle works out, it was a good decision. But I think he did make a bad decision. I wanted him to go to the Bulls because
I think he regrets it a lot.
That would have been, I mean, it's not a guaranteed championship, but look at the Bulls, right? Are they a championship contender right now with Rose?
Derrick Rose doesn't play.
I think they're a possible championship contender. So say Melo went there and Rose goes down. I mean, as far as offense goes, I put Rose and Melo in the same category. So it's basically the same team. So if they're a contender with Rose now without Melo, and if Melo goes there, they're unstoppable if Rose and Melo are both on top of their game.
Does Pau Gasol still go there if Melo goes there?
Pau Gasol doesn't go there, which I know what you mean, yeah. That's tough.
Maybe,
so if it's like Jimmy Butler, Melo...
Could you move a guy maybe like Doug McDermott over there, and can he be as effective as
you could slide McDermott to the 4. I mean, they got that guy...
Taj Gibson there
Milicic, the guy from
Darko
Spain.
Milicic,
not Darko.
Not Darko.
Not Darko. Darko's in like the Serbian army right now. Milotic. Something like that. He's a good power forward over from Spain. They wanted him for a while now. But that is a very good point you mentioned, because if you do bring Melo, you do lose Pau Gasol.
I mean, do they potentially keep Carlos Boozer if that's the case?
No, you don't keep Boozer at all. Like this guy, no, you don't. Boozer is... He was a good player back when he was on Cleveland and Utah, but not anymore. He's still not a bad player. He just shoots too much. But that was a good point, because if Pau Gasol's not there,
are they still as?
Are they with Rose, Melo, Butler, Gasol, and
but does Gasol
Noah
potentially take less money if?
Go there too?
Carmelo,
maybe he's on the Thunder, like you said.
If Carmelo goes, like, hey, we can
that's a stacked team.
A title here.
I mean, if you're starting lineups, Rose, Jimmy Butler, Melo, Gasol, and Noah, as far as I'm concerned, that's a championship. Like, you might as well walk right in. But I think Melo does regret his decision, because with or without Rose, that's a good team. Because Noah, Defensive Player of the Year there. Jimmy Butler is going to win Most Improved Player this year.
He doesn't have to play defense.
Doesn't have to play any defense. If you're playing LeBron, you're going to be, if you're playing the Cavs, you're guarding Deion Waiters. You're not guarding LeBron because Jimmy Butler's guarding him. Anybody good, you're going to throw Jimmy Butler on him. So that takes all the defensive pressure on him. He'll drop 30 a game. So I just think he did regret his decision. I even wanted him to go to the Houston Rockets. I think that would have been a great pick. I mean, he did go back to the Knicks. He took his money, which he deserves.
And then does Bosh potentially come to Houston?
Does Bosh go? I don't know. I don't know if they can
Bosh has taken less money before to go somewhere
so
else.
You have Harden,
you could potentially
Bosh.
have Harden, Bosh, Melo, and Dwight on
but
that
the thing
roster.
is, too, would Harden and Melo work out? Because think about all the shots they take, and who gets the ball in the fourth quarter? Who would you rather give the ball to, Melo or Harden?
I'd give it to Melo.
You'd give it to Melo over Harden?
I'd give it to...
Maybe because he's older.
The problem is these two guys are notorious for not playing well in the postseason. James Harden and
Melo.
A lot of people blame James Harden for the OKC's loss to Miami when
he didn't show up.
He didn't play well. I mean, I honestly thought it was more Russell Westbrook. I didn't think Russell Westbrook had the best series either. But a lot of people blamed it on James Harden, and that could be part of the reason why OKC
didn't want him.
Kind of shipped him out. So it's interesting. It would be interesting to see a team, because you wonder would that
Are you going to give the ball
out?
to Howard in the post?
No.
But did he regret his decision? I don't know.
I think he regrets his decision, because I think he's kind of seeing the writing on the wall that they're not going to get anyone. I don't think anyone's going to go to New York. And even if you look at it, how many good years does Rajon Rondo have left?
He's 29 now.
I mean, maybe he plays till he's 35.
29. Even if he plays till he's 40, I mean, those last 5 years, he's not going to be averaging.
Exactly.
I'm going to say he's got 5 years left.
Okay.
Good years.
Kevin Durant, I'm putting him either staying in OKC or he's going to Washington. There's no other place.
I can see Gasol staying with Memphis, to be honest with you.
I mean, could you potentially see Gasol going and like teaming with Pau somewhere? I mean, that'd be crazy, but I don't think Gasol is going to go to New York. I don't see it. And I don't think that offense is good enough if it's revolving around Rondo, Gasol, and Melo. I don't think they're going to be able to score with a team like Cleveland.
Because it's literally just Melo would be scoring at that point.
Rondo scores, but that's not what he's best at. He's a ball distributor. And then you look at Gasol, and Gasol's not really known for scoring either. He's more of a defensive player.
in the past he hasn't been scoring. I mean, this year he's averaging 20 a game, but who knows, is that going to continue? And
he's not going to get the same amount of looks as he is going to be. I mean, given Memphis has a lot of good players on their roster right now, but if you put Melo on Memphis's roster, I mean, everyone's shot's going to go down. But I think that the Bulls was a good fit. I still think that the best place for him to go was either Dallas or Houston. I mean, Dallas kind of snuck in at the end as a possible spot for him to go, and I think that team would have been serious. I mean, you're probably taking Parsons off the roster.
Oh, Parsons.
But you have
Jameer Nelson at the 1.
I mean, then you could have Monte Ellis, Carmelo, Dirk, and Chandler.
That'd be interesting. That'd be a similar
roster.
scoring backcourt as like with Ellis and Melo, that's a lot of shots going up, but that is a lot of scoring.
Roster.
I mean, Ellis dropped 39 the other night.
Yeah.
Again, last night against the OT, which was a big win. I mean, the Mavericks are a good team.
No,
this
the Mavericks
year.
are a serious
and if you had a guy like
right
Melo,
now, and you add Melo to that. I mean, if you add Melo, you can potentially. I mean, Dirk's getting older. I mean, you can segue from Dirk,
into Melo,
rides out into the sunset or whatever, retires his career,
go
and
back
then
to Germany.
You have Carmelo Anthony back. Just put
maybe
it right
bring
in
it,
there.
and you could track the other guys. But he did stay in New York, and an interesting thing is how LeBron took that option. I mean, I understand LeBron took the option as it made the contract work out, and he just. I think it almost had to work out like that, but he could opt out after this year and go join Melo on the Knicks.
That's not going to happen. He's not leaving Cleveland.
If he ever left Cleveland,
no way LeBron James
he'd be the most
Cleveland.
hated player ever.
I still don't like LeBron James
because
for what
of
he
the
did in Cleveland. Given he's back or whatever,
what if he leaves
still
again?
don't like what
if he leaves again?
He's never going to leave again. LeBron's ending his career in a Cavaliers uniform.
But I can see what you're saying, how nobody wants to go there. But they're thinking about trading for Rondo this year, which would help, but
it's not.
I think he ultimately made the wrong decision. I think he should have left, and I feel like he's going to be the type of guy who, down the road, he's retired. Oh, I never won a championship, or he'll be like a Karl Malone, desperate. He goes to the Lakers at the end of his career to possibly win a ring, and they got knocked out by the Sacramento Kings, I believe.
Yeah, I believe it was Kings.
With my man, that was the year before. That was the worst officiated game ever, but yeah, I don't want to. I want to see him get a ring. I think he should.
I mean,
left.
what if he goes? What if he goes to the Lakers?
Melo?
Does he regret it then?
The Lakers would have been. He would have regretted it. He should not have gone to the Lakers. No way.
But if he goes to the Lakers, do the Lakers push and try to get Kevin Love?
If he goes to the Lakers, I think the Lakers get Love or Westbrook regardless.
But do they get him? Do they trade and get him?
Do they trade and get him? Yes, I think that's a Would Love rather play with Melo or LeBron? Obviously LeBron, but I think if Melo's there and he can go back, because L.A. is where he went to college. He went to UCLA. He loves the West Coast. Yeah. So I think that would be a reasonable thing if Melo was there with Kobe. But again, that's a lot of shots going up.
So what happens with Kobe?
What happens with Kobe? He retires. Melo still.
Well,
I don't know.
What about this season? Is Kobe going to hand the Lakers organization to Carmelo Anthony?
No.
You think?
I don't know.
They're going to butt heads?
I can't see Carmelo in a Lakers uniform.
You can't see. Oh, what about? Remember when everyone was like Carmelo and LeBron are going to L.A. and then
that would never work out with Kobe Melo. Like, looks great on paper if you have Kobe Melo LeBron. If you have a fantasy team with those guys, like that's unstoppable. But it doesn't work out on the same team. I mean, that's what happens to a lot of guys. Like you see these all-star teams. Like for example, when you had Nash, Kobe,
Dwight,
Ron Artest, Dwight, and Pau Gasol. Everybody's thinking, oh, look at this team. They're no doubt winning the title, but with injuries, the team chemistry didn't work out, and they were the 8th seed playing against the Spurs, trying to upset them. That's not going to work out. So a lot of the times, that's why I think the best fit was Chicago, because there wasn't another guy who's going to jack up a lot of shots. He would have hit in perfectly. That's what the Bulls needed was offense, and Melo was the scoring champion last year. So, 2 years ago. So I think it would have just been a perfect fit. I think he 100% regrets going. Well, not 100%. I think he regrets going to New York, and ultimately, I think he made the wrong decision. I mean, he got his money, but is he going to get a ring for it? I don't know.
Real quick, where's Russell Westbrook going?
L.A.
He's going to L.A.?
He's going to L.A. That's where he's from. I can't say maybe the Celtics. I can't say another team for him.
All right, I got to agree. I think that L.A. could be where he goes, and him and Kobe. That's a lot of shots too.
That's a lot of shots.
Regardless, that would be a serious team.
I'm sorry, Robert Sacre. You're not getting any touches down in the post.
That's all we have for this edition of Sports Talk. I'm Jeremy Farina.
I'm Justin Palillo.
We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.